Welcome, everybody. I'm Jon Clay, VP of Threat Intelligence here at Trend Micro, and welcome to episode 6 of our Trend Talks BizSec. Joining me today again is Ed Cabrera. Ed, how you doing?
Fantastic. It's great to be here. You know, the summer is here and we're actually having a great time.
And joining us today, Ed, you want to introduce our special guest speaker?
Absolutely. So with us today, we have a great friend and former colleague of mine, Matt Swenson. He's the division chief of the cyber division at Homeland Security Investigations Agency. So Matt, why don't you give us a little bit of background about you and what you do and what cyber division does at HSI?
Hey, Ed. Hey, John. Thanks for having me on. So a little bit about myself. I've been a special agent in the federal government for about 20 years now. And right now, my role is the division chief at the Homeland Security Investigations Cybercrime Center. We're located in Fairfax, Virginia, just outside of the Washington, D.C. Beltway. And really, we're the focal point or the coordination point for all cyber investigations for Homeland Security Investigations, otherwise known as HSI. If you haven't heard of HSI, we are the second largest investigative agency in the United States, so second only to the FBI. And we are the principal investigative arm of the Department of Homeland Security. So we work a variety of different types of investigations. We work things like human trafficking, narcotics smuggling, export cases involving the theft of military technology, financial investigations, and of course, one of our most significant or high priority investigations are cyber investigations.
Excellent. That's sounds great. And today we're going to talk about cryptocurrency use by the malicious actors out there. And so Ed, being a former Secret Service agent in that agency, they obviously investigate a lot of the financial crimes. And obviously, Matt, your organization is doing very similar stuff. So let's get into this topic, because I think it's going to be a fascinating one for the audience today. You know, the first question I have and this is really to both of you, because you obviously both have really good backgrounds in this, but why did malicious actors start using cryptocurrency in the first place?
So, threat actors and cyber criminals have always used digital currency in some regard. Prior to the creation of Bitcoin, we saw, digital currencies like web money and e-gold and perfect money and other types of forms of centralized currency. I think what makes Bitcoin more significant and more popular is the decentralized aspect to it. So there's no central coordinating body or ownership. There's no centralized server where all of the customer information resides. It's completely spread across the network. And so kind of that anonymity aspect of it has driven the popularity. If I'm sending Bitcoin to Ed and I go out and create a wallet, there's no real ownership attached to that wallet that can be determined. I don't need to register. I don't need to give my email or credit card information or first or last name or anything like that. I can simply go out, download a software wallet onto my computer, or go buy a hardware wallet and load it up with cryptocurrency and make a transaction to Ed, and all of that remains anonymous, until I go to cash it out to fiat. And so that's really what's led cryptocurrency in general to become kind of the de facto currency. It's pretty much replaced all of the centralized versions of digital currency now. And whether it's ransomware actors or actors selling network access that they've illegally obtained, they're almost all dealing exclusively in some type of cryptocurrency.
Yeah, and go ahead, Ed.
No, I just to add to what Matt was saying is I think what ransomware and ransomware as a service and the whole digital extortion scene has really amplified the use of cryptocurrency, but it's also been coupled with the meteoric rise of the actual price, right? You know, as an asset class, right? And so not only is it because of the distributed ledger and no central management or oversight of the actual cryptocurrency piece, but it's the pseudo-anonymity plus the asset value of crypto. And obviously recently it's just taken a dive, but it looks like it's coming back up. Maybe hit a bottom, but definitely the value has added to the increased use.
Yeah, and obviously you guys mentioned Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's probably the most popular, but are there some other cryptocurrencies that people may not be aware of that we're seeing, or are they shifting out of Bitcoin for some reason to others?
Yeah, so Bitcoin is still the most popular and the most widely known cryptocurrency out there. But we have seen a shift, particularly to anonymity-based coins. So there's coins now that seek to obfuscate any of the origination information that can be used to trace the transactions as they move across the ledger. So like Ed said, Bitcoin is essentially a public ledger. Anybody has full visibility into all the transactions that occur. But there's coins out there now, particularly like Monero, that seek to provide an additional layer of anonymity, so that if Ed and I are making a transaction, it's impossible to tell the origination and destination addresses involved, and that adds a layer of complexity to that. It's much harder to trace because it's not just out there publicly. And we've noticed that some of the more sophisticated actors, dark web market vendors in particular, and even dark web marketplaces as a whole, have started to move to become Monero exclusive markets, where they won't even accept Bitcoin anymore. They won't deal with it. They know that it's easy to trace. And so those marketplaces just say, hey, if you want to buy something, some illegal good, illicit good and service from our marketplace, you're forced to deal with Monero, because we know law enforcement has become very adept at tracing Bitcoin, and so that it's not worth the risk to them, even though it may be more difficult to get Monero. They know that it adds an extra veil of anonymity as they conduct these types of transactions. I mean, and Ed can speak to this, and we work very closely with Secret Service and IRS and FBI on these types of cases, that it's in a lot of investigations, it's all about following the money. A lot of times that's the easiest path to doing attribution on who's behind a criminal act. And the harder they make it for us to follow the money, the harder it is to figure out who they are in real life.
I would add also what the reason possibly why coins such as Monero haven't really exploded more is also the fact that, obviously, going back to the value piece, but I think there's also Bitcoin is going to be under more and more increased pressure on know your customer laws, as well as other compliance and governance issues, be it here in the United States or the EU and so forth. So as Bitcoin goes more mainstream, I think you'll see more investment and more usage, obviously, of coins such as Monero. And then also ransomware creates another reason why Bitcoin is actually being utilized, because it's easy. Because of the exchanges, the way they are and the way they've grown, it's easy for victims of ransomware attacks to be able to convert cash into Bitcoin in a very quick manner to be able to make payments for ransomware attacks.
Yeah, and so obviously we're hearing more and more about the regulation of cryptocurrencies, and so one of the big topics we wanted to dive into today is how do we make it hard for the malicious actors to actually use cryptocurrency. Is there anything we can do to kind of change what they have to do and stop their use of cryptocurrency, do you think, Matt?
Yeah, so it's come a long way. We have a bit further to go, but Bitcoin's essentially been around since 2009. Really, we started seeing it being kind of widely spread used in a criminal capacity in 2011. That was the creation of the first dark web marketplace, the Silk Road. And that was really actually like a proof of concept for Bitcoin, really, is that Bitcoin essentially, its proven use as a financial instrument was essentially an illegal one with a massive underground market, which is kind of fascinating. But it showed that, hey, yeah, it is a medium of value that can be used to exchange with goods and services, and that really proved that, hey, this is this is something substantial that the rest of the cyber actors quickly adopted. But at the time, it was the Wild West. A lot of the exchanges that were involved in cryptocurrency transactions, they didn't have know your customer. They weren't licensed as money service businesses. So those types of like bare minimum types of regulatory compliance safeguards that a normal financial institution or a money service business would have to do to be able to exchange the kind of money that they were exchanging, they weren't doing any of them. And so it's been kind of a process figuring out, well, what is cryptocurrency? How should we deal with it? What types of financial safeguards and regulations and compliance types issues should they be subject to? And so that's kind of been the process. I mean, we went from Bitcoin not being a thing to now it's a thing, and it's this huge billion-dollar industry essentially overnight. And so because of that kind of rapid ascent, it's taken a while. Regulatory and regulations and whatnot, that whole industry is not super dynamic usually, so it takes time. But I will say that there are still unlicensed exchanges out there, outside of the United States. And until we can get all of the countries to kind of comply, I think that the US is kind of the leader in cryptocurrency regulation. And cyber criminals are always going to go to unlicensed entities. And the more countries that we can kind of convince to say, hey, these are the types of regulations that you need to pass, the easier it's going to be for us to kind of enforce, the laws involving their illicit use.
Did I hear correctly that Russia just outlawed cryptocurrency in their nation?
Yeah, and there's been a lot of speculation that the Russian central bank was going to move in that direction. We saw China basically doing the same thing and actually outlawing mining. There's a lot of other countries where cryptocurrency is outright illegal to trade. There's countries where it's outright illegal to possess. There's really no uniformity across the board, across all nations. They all have their own separate laws and regulations involving it. And so I think we're going to move to more standardization of it in the future. But as of now, it's kind of differs from country to country.
Yeah. And that's the challenge, right? I mean, cryptocurrency is global in nature, right? Whereas you have in the past, right, the US dollar was US dollar, and you had all the other countries had their own form of currency. So it was a little bit more spread out, so to speak. But this, with it being global, obviously, it's going to require a global response, I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, I think of it like bulletproof hosting, right? If you have a bulletproof hosted service, and a country is just completely unwilling to cooperate with law enforcement, the activity is going to flock there. And it's the same thing with an unlicensed crypto exchange. If it's in a country that doesn't want to cooperate with law enforcement, then all of the cyber threat actors are going to move their activity to that particular exchange.
Interesting.
Hey, Matt, speaking about global response, like Jon was mentioning. I know you travel pretty much and work with a lot of international partners. I think you just came back from either some of Europol meetings and so forth. How is that type of engagement and partnership? Also, private industry, like companies like Trend Micro, where do you think our role is as a company to assist, but also what's the sort of the state of the union, so to speak, of public-private partnerships?
Yeah, so I mean, I was out at Europol. They had a huge virtual currency working group out there, and those types of kind of coordinated or collaborative efforts, I think, are critical because cyber is like you said, it's a global issue, and cybercrime is a global issue. It's very rare that we encounter a domestic cyber actor that doesn't have some sort of international footprint. Even if they do live within the United States, they're probably using a server hosted overseas, or they're communicating with other actors who are overseas, or they're selling something on a dark web market or a hacker forum that's hosted overseas. So because of that worldwide nature of cyber, you're going to need support from somebody outside of our border. So whether it's private or public partners or law enforcement partners that reside outside of the U.S., we're going to need their help. We can't do it alone. And so kind of trying to coordinate across the spectrum of cyber, not just law enforcement, but private, academia, those types of partnerships, I think gives us a fuller picture. Because one of the things that cyber actors, criminals do is they coordinate very well with each other, and we're not necessarily as open on the good side of things, and we need to be much better about that in coordinating our efforts and sharing information, and those types of endeavors, I think, are critical to maintaining safe networks.
Now, trust is at the heart of everything that we do, right? We try to maintain the trust into how we protect our customers and so forth. Their job is to exploit that trust, obviously from a technical or process perspective. But that's the one thing, Matt, I think me and you will always talk about is how they're able to scale trust, right? And that's where we need to get better at, is scaling trust on the good side, because they can do $1 million deals, multi-million dollar deals without even knowing each other, just utilizing virtual nicks and just reputations. Obviously, we need a lot more trust building exercises on our side to do a lot better work.
I couldn't agree more. And at the end of the day, if these guys aren't arrested, they're just going to keep doing it over and over and over again. There's no stopping them.
Yeah. So we're going to start wrapping up here. It's been a great discussion, but Matt, I'd love to hear your two things I'd like to hear about from you right now to finish this up. One is, what type of, are you seeing more crypto mining, or do you think these exchanges that we've seen in the past getting hit for even hundreds of millions of dollars are going to be the main target of these actors? And then lastly, where do we go from here with the whole cryptocurrency area and malicious actors?
So, the mining question is interesting. We've seen a lot of mining infrastructure leave China, almost all of it leave China. A lot of it's migrated into the US. We saw, a lot of mining being set up in Texas and generally places where energy is less expensive, because it's a very energy dependent, thing, mining cryptocurrency. It's not cheap, and it all ends up being kind of an equation of how much do we spend on energy as opposed to how much do we get out of one Bitcoin or whatever, in versus out. And it'll be interesting to see, particularly like Ed was saying, with the decrease in the price of Bitcoin, how many people want to keep mining, right? Because when the profits go down, the profit margins decrease substantially. So it's definitely something to look out for. But I don't think that cryptocurrency is going anywhere. I think that, you could see the price of Bitcoin go down to $5 and the cyber criminals are still going to use it, right? Because at the end of the day, Bitcoin is priced in dollars. You'll see people who want to say, hey, one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin. Until you can spend a Bitcoin to buy a luxury yacht or a house or your Lamborghini or all the flashy things that cyber criminals like to buy, it's going to be priced in fiat currency. And so I think that's the way they look at it, is that they will adjust how much Bitcoin that they price things out in based on the value of Bitcoin as it relates to the dollar. So we saw it when Bitcoin was down to $5. It was widely used on a Silk Road, all the way up to it being in the $60,000. It hasn't got more or less profitable. Obviously, if you're sitting on cryptocurrency, you're making money in your bank account or in your crypto account as it goes up. But I don't think it's going away from that perspective. I don't know that it'll ever replace, the US dollar as the #1 currency that people use, or you'll go on Amazon and shop with Bitcoin. But I can fairly confidently say that cyber criminals, as long as there's any sort of value to it, they're going to keep using it. And we're going to have to be adept at tracing those illicit transactions.
Good. Okay. And interesting. So, hey, thanks for the information, Matt. You've been a great guest for us. Ed, any last comments from you?
No, it's
thanks for having me on, guys.
No last comment, but thanks again, Matt.
No, thanks, guys.
Right,
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So thanks everybody for attending this session of Trend Talks BizSec. We'll be back in 2 weeks for another episode, and we'll be having more guest speakers on like Matt, who are experts in their field and sharing their knowledge and information. So everybody have a great day. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.